Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And I have a couple of headlines here as we are approaching this so-called deadline by Donald Trump for a deal to be made, as he says, with the Iranians by 8 p.m. today, or else, according to him, a civilization, right, is going to die tonight. And I say so-called because, we have to ultimately watch and see. But as his tendency has been with these words, and his way of speech to manipulate markets and, the minds of the people, oftentimes he'll say one thing, he won't do it, he might extend the deadline, or he might do it, another time, right? But keep in mind that even before this whole striking Iran, he himself has come out and said that they deliberately use mixed signals before they go and attack or they go and do something. What's also interesting is, amidst all of this, I believe last night or so, Israel bombed, U.S. bombed Karg Island, and Israel was, bombed, was it some railways in Iran? So it's interesting because the so-called deadline, right, is not even here, but they're already unleashing heavy attacks over there in Iran. So we'll see what happens. At the same time, there are sources saying that the Iranians have closed all channels of negotiation, communication, backdoor communication to the U.S. because they're just not seeing eye to eye. So it's interesting that was being said yesterday, I think even earlier today. But now, as it gets closer and closer to the time, there's mention of things like this here, right? U.S. officials cites glimmer of progress on ceasefire after Trump warns a whole civilization will die tonight. And of course, it's interesting that it would come from U.S. officials because usually you hear one thing from the West, you hear one thing from the East, and then it's so on and so forth. So we'll see, right, what ends up happening. Does he end up hitting the button? Is he going to extend the deadline? Now, his tone has been the strikes on Iran are happening, quote unquote, but could change. Okay. So anyway, let's read a little bit here. It says here, Trump threatens to take out entire country of Iran tomorrow night, which that's not, that's not going to be the case in the sense that Russia and the allies of Iran are not going to sit there and allow you to take out the entire country. Okay, that's not going to happen. They're going to intervene. Okay, so in fact, there is a headline I have here on Russia and China, basically being against the use of military force by these other nations to open the Strait. So tomorrow night demands free traffic of oil in Hormuz. Trump threatens Iran can be taken out in one night, maybe tomorrow. Warns every bridge and power plant will be destroyed. Washington Street's Journal. Now that's a big claim. Every bridge and power plant. Washington or WSJ reports U.S. military is making preparations for potential strikes on energy targets in Iran. Universities and airports are already being hit, which is crazy work, right? Sunday night, Axios report on a U.S. proposed 45-day ceasefire has by Monday morning been rejected by Iran, which later on Monday issued a 10-point letter via Pakistan. And they're basically saying, we don't want a ceasefire. We want an end to this war, right? With guarantees that you're not going to attack us again and you're not going to trigger this again, which the U.S. seems to not be on board with, right? So that gives you insight that they don't want an end to this. Israel strikes large petrochemical plant at South Pars, which is responsible for half of the country's petrochemical production. Now you see how much damage they're doing here, right? Do you think that the Iranians in their minds are thinking that if you're doing this already right now, then we negotiate a so-called peace deal with you, and then you turn around and bomb us again? Like, what's going to stop you from doing that? Trump reaffirms Tuesday deadline before vital infrastructure gets attacked as final, calls Americans opposed to Iran war foolish, saying it's all about Tehran not getting a nuke. Israel kills experienced longtime head of IRGC intelligence. Iranian missile strike on Haifa residential complex kills 4. Now, earlier there was a post that the White House was denying, right? They basically were saying that there were some claims about the potential use of a nuke by the U.S., which they were saying was being hinted at by, I think, J.D. Vance, but they came out and said that's not the case. But what I want to highlight here is the fact that that's even being mentioned or talked about at all, right? It's a very interesting thing there. So next we have here, U.S. official cites glimmer of progress on ceasefire after Trump warns a whole civilization will die tonight. Now, when you start hearing speech like this, you're not dealing with, you're dealing with a madman, right? And he's been put in office, and he has his handlers, right? He has his guardrails, but this is the face that they need to push something like this. Okay, a whole civilization will die tonight. They're not just saying I'm going to commit a war crime. You're saying like I'm going above and beyond. And he said that. Like there's nothing that aside from his own moral compass that's going to stop him from doing whatever he wants. Tehran Times, all communications with U.S. aid or U.S. side suspended. Then issues correction, reverses. This after Trump Tuesday morning threat, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. Axios cites glimmer of progress on negotiations. Well, we'll find out when 8 p.m. hits, right? If he doesn't come out before Trump, that is, and say something, then we'll find out when 8 p.m. hits. In a call with Fox's Brett Baer, Trump says 8 p.m. deadline today could change if negotiations move forward, but sticking to deadline for now. And I'd be very curious to hear if a so-called negotiation is made, what exactly this negotiation would be. Which side is going to capitulate? Which side is going to give in to the other? And how's that going to go? But just know if they did come out with something like that, that's not going to be anything substantial, right? And all that means is that the next time this fire lights again, it's going to burn hotter than hot. Kharg Island heavily bombed in preparation for potential U.S. Marine Special Forces ground seizure. So you got to think about that, right? Like, remember what they did in Venezuela, right? There was a loud explosions, and then boom, the forces went in. And when they were speaking about the operation after the fact, they were saying like, this is all strategic, right? We took out this, we took out that, we took out their surveillance, we took out their eyes so that we can go in there. So look at what they're doing. Where are they bombing? Why are you saying that, okay, we're close to reaching a deal or trying to reach a deal, but you're strategically hitting certain parts in Iran? Okay, you already bombed Kharg Island, and now they're saying what? In preparation for potential U.S. Marine Special Force ground seizure. So all these, is just, there's deadline here, deadline here. It's not really for peace, it's for time. And they've showed you that before. It's time and time again. Anyway, reports of human chains at bridges, power plants in Iran forming. Yeah, because then if you actually go forward with it and blow those places up, I mean, that's going to be a lot of blood on your hands, and it's not going to be a good look. Israel has begun attacking Iran's railway infrastructure, telling civilians to not take trains, cancellations across country. IRGC, still defiant, announces new retaliatory attacks on petrochemical plants in eastern Saudi Arabia. And at the end of all of this, what is going up? Oil. Because in the side effects of this conflict is the fact that the world is still suffering. Okay, Iran's 10-point counter to the U.S. 15-point ceasefire shows sign of willingness to compromise. Reparations from U.S. dropped as a demand. Vance says war will end very shortly. And Russia, China veto UNSC Hormuz resolution, which I have on here. Okay, and it lets you know that at least what side they're on, or, where their interest lies. Let's say that. So taking a quick look here, Russia, China veto UN resolution authorizing military force to reopen Hormuz Strait. And this is basically, well, I'll read the first two paragraphs. You get a sense of it. On Tuesday, a United Nations Security Council resolution on opening the Strait of Hormuz failed due to Russia and China vetoing it. And that's today. It was drafted by Bahrain and authorized countries to use military force, if necessary, to open the strait for the free flow of shipping and commerce. The resolution garnered 11 votes in favor, but permanent veto-wielding members China and Russia blocked it by registering no votes. So they're letting you know, no, this is not a good idea. We're not on board with this. Now here it says, it appears that China and Russia expressed concerns about the invocation of Chapter 8 or 7, arguing that such authorization could be interpreted as legitimizing the use of force by member states without clearly defined limits. They also raised concerns because it's in their best interest that Iran is preserved. Okay, they're making money, at least Russia is right now. They also raised concerns about the potential imposition of sanctions and maintained that the draft failed to address the root cause or causes of the current crisis in the Middle East. In their view, the text risked exacerbating tensions, which is to make it worse, rather than promoting de-escalation. And they urged Bahrain not to advance the initiative. These reservations led China and Russia to break silence twice. So they're basically saying, no, don't do it. We against this. Okay, we're not for this. And we know, right, as pertaining to Ezekiel 38, that Russia is going to get involved. Okay, and it mentions that they're going to have an evil thought and say, we're going to go up to the land of unwalled villages. So right now, they're still playing that semi-diplomatic role, but you'll see once the line of no return or the point of no return is crossed, at that point, all bets are off. So taking a look here, today is Bridge Day. It says, as traders return from the Easter break, markets are again counting down to an ultimatum deadline set by President Trump. Trump took to Truth Social over the weekend to warn the Iranian regime to make a deal, threatening that Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, where infrastructure of that kind will be targeted by American forces if Iran does not open the Strait of Hormuz. Now, once again, Iran is that the strait being closed is something they're staunchly on. And the U.S. is like, no, it has to be open. So even if they come to some deal and it doesn't involve the opening of the strait, which I don't see Iran doing that, they're going to tell you their mission is not done. In some way, somehow, the conflict is going to continue to escalate because it's the will of the Lord. Trump has set a deadline of 8 p.m. for a deal to be reached. Iran has said that it will retaliate against energy and water infrastructure of Gulf states if it is struck. So there's a lot going on, but at the end of the day, just like the Lord said, pursuant to Mark 13 and 37, and what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. Okay, so we have to watch as well as pray, because as these things, escalate more and more, they're going to reach this front, this so-called home front. Okay, as they're even talking about having unused tools, that they can use if needed. So keep your eyes open, keep your eyes and ears on the news, pay attention, and let's see how the Lord, steers this ship of prophecy. So with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying and informative to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.